Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to my full hands-on review of Yeco. What's Yeco? Well, Yeco is a multi-touch controller for Ableton Live, and it doesn't run on an iPad. Oh no, this runs on a desktop PC or Apple Mac, and in particular, in this case, on the Surface Book. And why is that important? Well, it's important because Yeco runs on the same machine as Ableton Live. So you're not having to carry two devices around, you're not having to worry about Bluetooth or networking or setting up some kind of network to get your iPad into your computer and back out again. It all runs on the same platform, in the same space, doing a fully integrated job. But that's not the coolest thing about Yeco. The coolest thing about Yeco is that it makes Ableton Live touchable. Now, Ableton, as it goes, doesn't mind being touched, provided that you've edited the options.txt file and added absolute mouse mode so that the faders and things don't wang all over the place. Provided you've done that, then touch is actually quite good. You can pick up faders without too much trouble. You can move things around. It responds relatively well. The problem is, in the first instance, it's not multi-touch, so I can't do more than one thing at a time, but also these ridiculously small and tiny bastard buttons are really difficult to hit with your fudgy finger. I mean, you can do it. Ta-da! You see, instantly, I can do it. That's fine. You can trigger individual ones if you try really hard. See, third time, not too bad. And in Ableton itself, you can make it bigger. If you go to the preferences, zoom, if we go all the other way, 200%, like so, then that's awesome. It's nice. Look at it. Look at it. It's huge. Now I can hit that button. Can I? Yes, I can hit that button. The downside being is that I can't really see very much. Can't see much of my project. Don't really know what's going on. And I still have to hit the play button. It's not just a matter of touching the clip. I have to hit the play button. And that causes problems, particularly in a live situation. In a live situation, which is what Ableton Live is really good at, you want to be able to have a good overview of your project. You want to be able to see what's going on. And you want to be able to, in a nervous and, oh my God, I'm going to miss it moment, hit the right clip and have it play. So, you know, you're always pushed into hardware with Ableton because trying to do anything with a mouse is ridiculous in a live situation. So you have these hardware controllers, the Launchpad Pro. The Push, of course, has done a lot more because it brings in a lot more features and functionality which allows you to get in to Ableton. But us guys, in the touch world, everything is already there. It's all there, we just want to be able to touch it because we can control everything, we can see everything. And that's what Yeco does. It sort of gives you a front end for Ableton Live that's totally touchable, totally sized right for your fingers and for messing about with this. And it provides the bridge between the user, the performer, and the software. You know, as I'm always saying, the greatest thing about touch is you can make it whatever you like. It's fully customizable. It can continuously change because it's a piece of software. It's not a hardware configuration that you are restricted to. It can be whatever it is depending on what you're looking at. And that's awesome. And I think Yeco really get that. You know, since Emulator Pro seems to have disappeared up its own arse, Yeco seem to have managed to do what they couldn't. And that's to provide a fully working and integrated piece of multi-touch controller software for a proper desktop DAW. Right, so let's have a look. So setup is relatively easy. You install the software, you have to install some remote scripts into that unfathomably placed Ableton Live folder, but it's done within the software. It takes you there and you press a button and it comes together. You then have to do a little bit of setup in Ableton as well. Let me show you that in the options, preferences, go to the MIDI side of things. You have to set Yeco up as a control surface. Because you've installed these scripts, it just appears there as an entry, so you select that. That's the OSC side. I'll try to explain the difference between OSC and MIDI. I may not, I don't know, I might just leave you hanging, but there's two elements to Yeco. OSC, which is kind of a two-way communication protocol that Ableton Live supports, and it enables some really awesome things that MIDI cannot. And then we also have MIDI control. Now, to get MIDI to work from Yeco into Ableton Live, you need an internal virtual MIDI port. Now, there are a couple of these available. It's not difficult. There's one from nerds.de called loopB1, which is free. And also Tobias Harrison also does one called loopMIDI monitor. I can't remember. Anyway, the links will be in the description. And what that enables you to do is send MIDI from one piece of software to another piece of software on the same machine. It's an internal link. So you need to have installed that as well, and then you set that up here in the MIDI ports. I'm using the loopB internal MIDI here. You turn on track and you turn on remote. And once you've got Ableton loaded up with the project you want to use, you load Yeco and you hit the play button and something beautiful happens. Let me show you. Isn't that lovely? It's just a thing of beauty. I love the way they've done that. What am I talking about? Well, it's simple things. It faded in, and what I'm being presented with is the clip view, the session view, I believe they call it. And it's pulled in all of the clips, it's named them, it's named all of the stacks, and it's all there ready to go. It's a lovely thing. It's so reassuring to turn on, or to enable a piece of software which completely delivers on what it's supposed to do. It's not a dumb controller where you just have a few pads or something that you can press that you're going to have to then map to something else and make that happen. The use of OSC enables Yeco to pull out a whole bunch of information from Ableton Live and put it here for me to see and use immediately. And that's flipping awesome. I could go into a big long rant here now about MIDI 2.0 and how that MIDI, wonderful that it is so restrictive and limited, particularly when you start looking at something like OSC and realize that there are other things. There are other ways of controlling and other ways of moving information between bits of software. And why don't we do more of that? Why are we only ever stuck with MIDI, which is so dumb, so passive? Anyway, not going to go down that road right now, because we're looking at Yeco. So let's run a loop or something, shall we? Now, as you can see, rather than the round circle you get in the sort of the timer, like when you were waiting for a school's program to appear and you had that timer go around. That's what Ableton Live likes. They like that kind of thing. Whereas with Yeco, they've gone for this straight line approach. So you have this box that's filling up from left to right, and that's giving you the timing. And also you can see how that relates to other clips. So I've got one here which is going twice as fast as this one. Navigation within the clip view is different to how most touch things work. Most touch things work by finger dragging, pinch and zooming. Now, we were sort of in some ways conned into believing that pinch and zoom is the most awesome thing ever in the world, and actually it's not really, because you're getting your fingers all over what you're trying to look at. So what helpfulness is that? And also there's so much room for accidentally moving stuff about. I mean, this is one of the problems I've had with Bitwig, is that I can accidentally move things when zooming in and zooming out and things like that, and that's a problem if you're in the middle of a session or in a live performance when you're trying to get to something and you end up messing the whole thing about. So this dispenses with all of that mapping about in the middle and gives you these nice big scroll things on the side. in loads of bits of software, scroll bars are of course very, very common, but they tend to be on the narrow side and hard to grab with a finger. I mean, I don't know if you saw my look at Cubase 9. It has impossibly small scroll bar things at the side. I don't know what they're thinking. They needed those extra millimeters to give to the project page, I suppose. But it makes them very hard to touch. Whereas here, beautiful. I can move around with no bother. I can do it from a distance. I don't have to be really precise about it. I mean, in fact, the one thing you can't do in Yeco is move a clip anywhere. And that is actually vital. And we'll see how you do move stuff about later on. But at the moment, for the clip view, for what you want for live performance, you want the clips to stay the heck where they are. Secondly, in order to launch a clip, I don't have to hit the play button. It has the little play button. Thank you. But you don't have to hit it. I can hit it anywhere and it will start playing. And another thing is that the clip, all it does is turns on and off. It doesn't do anything else. The issue I ran into with Bitwig recently is that there's a couple of things you can do with a clip. You can launch it by touching it, but if you sort of touch it and move a little bit, you can select it instead, which is when you're creating is awesome. You touch and sort of go down a little bit and you select it rather than launch it, which means you can then edit it and so on. And as I say, in compositional mode, that's great. But in live performance, that has been killing me because you're there, the surface is up and you're in a space and you're not completely narrowed focused on the thing. You just want to reach out and touch something to make it go. So, you know, the big drop's coming up and you go, boom. And as you touch it, you accidentally drag your finger a tiny bit and it selects the whole scene rather than triggering it. That's happened to me a number of times. And you're kind of stuck floundering, waiting for another 4 bars to go round so that you can pretend that that's what you intended to do. It's not cool. It's not cool in the slightest. And that is one of the reasons why I've jumped myself back into Ableton Live. And I've been able to do that because of the existence of Yeco. So you're kind of getting the feeling already that I really like this. Yeah, I do. Lots more to tell you about though. So looking at this view, what have you got? Well, at the bottom here, you've got your on-off track buttons. You've got your record button. You've got a solo button. You've got a stop button. You've got the names at the top. La-di-da-di-da. So how do you launch your scenes? Well, at the side here, we have a bunch of icons which bring up different views, different pages. One of them is master. Ta-da! There's my scene. Right, so the first one up here though that we haven't even looked at yet is the mixer. Bring that up, set something going. And they've gone for these sort of bar graph type faders rather than having some kind of mock fader that you're moving about. You're moving this sort of tower of strange greenness. Alongside, you have these meters fluttering up either side, which are rather lovely. So along with that, you've got your send also. Currently set to reverb and delay, as it nearly always is. You have the possibility for other sends. You've got your panning at the bottom. And you've got the A/B crossfade thing, which I don't have any idea what that's about. Obviously with the mixer up, you get to see a lot less of what's going on at the top. But you can very easily scroll through it to whatever it is you want to be looking at. And of course, it's multi-touchable. So I can move that and I can move that. And that, and that. So just like that, I have a controller for the session view in Ableton Live. I can trigger loops, I can trigger scenes, I can mix, I can send to effects, I can turn them on and off. All the usual things that you would want to do in live performance. That essentially is a launchpad. You know, it's the same functionality, but all laid out so that you can see what's going on without having to have a screen up here and a controller down here. It's all there. In fact, I haven't even had to look at Ableton Live in order to use it. I've not had to refer to it at all because all of the information is on the screen because it's a touchscreen. It's a customizable controller. It's not fixed in hardware. It can show you whatever you need to see. But that's not all. In fact, pretty far from it. We have all these other bits down here that we haven't even looked at yet. Now here's something I didn't know. You can build a controller for third-party plugins within the detail view in Ableton Live. This is important because Yeco can give you full control over your plugin parameters. Now if it's a Ableton Live device, then that's really easy because that information is there. It's findable from OSC and Yeco can pull all that in. So for instance, I've got an Ableton Live device, the grinder track, which I've selected here. So look at it in Ableton Live, here it is. This is the devices view, which shows you all the information about that plugin. In Yeco, I hit the devices button and it pulls that information in. So I've got all of those parameters are here and multi-touchable. Touchable, gonna touch that, there we go. Which is great. So that information is there, it's two-way, it's one updating the other, feeding each other. Awesome. But how do you do that on a third-party plugin? So if I select the Mini Moog over here, it has no devices within Ableton Live. It just has this little thing down here, which I've always thought was a bit pointless, and it has a ridiculously small button to allow you to open up the GUI. But yeah, there, ta-da! Awesome, but it has no parameters within the devices view for Yeco to see. Aha! But Ableton Live allows you to create an editor within the devices view, in which case Yeco can then steal it. So I did that for the SEM over here I've got plugged in. This project, by the way, is a whole bunch of Arturia synths I've got running on here. And I mean, look out for glitches and stuff because I've not heard any. It's been working flawlessly on the Surface Book. So simply in here in Ableton Live, I hit the configure button and then you can choose different parameters, hit on a knob and it appears down here. So I've got the color frequency and the resonance for the SEM stuck into the devices view. And because I've done that, if I go back to Yeco, it's now appeared here. So anything that I want to control within my third-party plugins, either audio or instruments, I can set them up in Ableton Live as part of the project in the devices view, and then they get sucked into Yeco for live performance. So I've got my filter and my resonance right here. So I go and find my SEM track, okay, and let's get that running. As you can see, it's already automated. It's doing its thing. The SEM also has an EQ on it, the piano EQ, which is an Ableton Live device, and it gets tabbed down here. Whatever devices you've got loaded, get tabbed. So I can just tap on the piano one, and it pulls all of that in, because that's an immense device, and I have all of these parameters all named, all at the correct settings available to me. I mean, that's just amazing. This is part of the OSC thing. I mean, in MIDI, you can do that through tedious mapping and sorting all that sort of stuff out. But with OSC, it just sucks that information straight in and gives it to you on your fingers. So I've got the 2 bits I set up there, and the enormous stuff I set up here. Let's see if I can add another control, because I forget now how I did that. I press configure. Do that again. Then I honestly think I just touch a knob and then that works. Let's go for the delay. Yeah, and now the delay parameter has appeared. I can go back in Yeco. Now sometimes I find you need to reopen the page you were looking at. It's not always there automatically. So I'm going to turn that off, turn it on again, and now it's brought in the delay as well. So this raises a good question. Knobs or sliders? Yeah, what do you think? Knobs or sliders? You're a knobs person? Are you a sliders person? Horizontal, vertically? Do you want to go round, or do you like an up and down type of feel? Well, I mean, Yeco for this instance has gone for sliders. Slide, 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 slide. Now with touch, we tend to find that knobs are not that great. I mean, they're great, but they're not that great. I mean, if we bring up the mixer, so I've got the knobs here, I can touch it, then I can't see it, and then I drag one way or the other, and it does get revealed as I drag my finger, but it's often just, you're often covering it completely. If I have 2 fingers, and I'm trying to do that, that can be pretty awkward. It works, but it gets a bit awkward. With sliders, it's actually a bit easier to have 2 fingers, 1 finger that way, 1 finger that way. And you can see more of what's going on because the values are shown on a larger space. So sliders, I think, although it's perhaps less visually attractive, we like the roundy, circly, knobby bits. The sliders tend to work a bit better. Although for me, vertical is what I would like. I like it more like the mixer, because in the mixer I can grab 2 faders and I can do quite a bit with 2 fingers without it getting too troublesome. Obviously, bring in 2 fingers like that, you can do what the heck you like. But you can see the parameters, you can see the level that it's at all the time, rather than in a knob where you're covering it all up. But, we like everything, ultimately. But Yeco have decided to go for this horizontal slider thing. And yeah, it works, but I think we're still finding exactly what works best for fingers. Sometimes the orderness, the straightness, and the way that everything is lined up is not actually that natural for the gait of our hands, for the way our fingers fall. And maybe there's some work that could be done in investigating how best to have these things for where our fingers actually lie. The next one down is this. This is drum pads, or drum paddy style things, although of course it doesn't have to be drum pads. Response is excellent. I mean, the touch screen of the Surface Book is brilliant. It's superb. There's no appreciable lag. You can absolutely play it. This is going through my KMix audio interface, which is giving me a latency of under 10 milliseconds, around 6 milliseconds, I think. And that's excellent. So velocity, of course, on a touchscreen doesn't work. Doesn't matter how hard you tap the screen, there's no additional information being sent. So instead, what we've got with Yeco, with these pads here, it's very similar to what they did in Bitwig, which is they've made velocity a function of depth, of waving hands around, a function of the place where you strike the pad. That's what I'm trying to say. So you tap at the top and it's light. As you come down, it's harder. It's quite remarkably, can be, expressive. Now you can change that around. There's a button here that I tap that, and now the top is hard and the bottom is soft. So this pad relates to whatever it is you've got selected over here with the record button, the same as you would in Ableton Live. It's no different in that respect. You enable a track for recording and your MIDI device is routed to it. You can choose a MIDI channel here, and you have another choice of being able to slide between notes, or you can lock it so that doesn't actually happen. Now there's another feature that they've bolted in here which is not anything to do with percussion, it's to do with chords, which is this button here. You can bring up a stack of common chords, like for instance a major 9. I'll highlight that and I'll stick that there. I'll stick another one there and another one there. I'll then turn that off, and it's allocated those chords only to those 3 notes. So the other notes in between are not allocated to chords. Which is a kind of a nice and interesting feature. I like that very much. Up here on this grid is where you change the octaves. So you can see it right at the very top. Down to the bottom if you can find a note. There we go. Now if I can clear those, if I like, by hitting the clear button and then touching the chord where it was, and close that. Also, if you want to have the velocity set at a particular place, you can use this slider here. Now this tends to override the velocity curve that you find across the pad, but if you want it set to a set setting, then set it here. Let's have a look at it on a drum rack, because that's Ableton's built-in sort of drum thing. I've got one set up here called the 808. Let's make this go away and then bring it back in. Okay, so now it's sucked in the information on what drum sounds are allocated to which pad. Yes, lovely. It's on the edge of playable, I have to say. Let me just pop back into live to see what the settings on the K-Mix are. Yeah, I mean, I'm on 256 samples, which is, yeah, under 10 milliseconds, as I say, but it's just on the edge of playable. If I really wanted to get into doing some tight drumming, I could drop that to 128 samples, and that would work better. And as you can hear, the velocity is still there. I can, as I say, I can set that all the way up. So it doesn't matter where I hit it, it's now at maximum. And I find, in order to get the velocity mapping back again, I have to make it go away and then bring it back in. And then it's back. Now the next one down is a larger view of that. I've now got an 8x8 pad, but this time it hasn't pulled in the drum sounds, because I guess this is less of a drum thing and more of a playing thing. Actually, I'm not entirely sure what it's for. I mean, it looks to me like it could be something like a launch pad, but you don't need that because you've got the clip launcher over here. Well, then maybe it could be a step sequencer, but it isn't a step sequencer or a matrix sequencer. So its functionality seems to be best served back to our stage piano again. In fact, I think there's a lot of scope for creativity in this little box. So we've got so far. Now we're going to hit the virtual keyboard itself. Here we go. That's very groovy. I mean, it works very, very well. You've again got your velocity up here. Although, of course, if you're clawing a note, clawing a chord, then your sort of thumb and little finger are going to automatically land high on a loud note, and the other fingers are going to be soft because that's just how your fingers fall. That's not ideal, perhaps. Also, on a smaller screen like this, they have a doubling up button to make the keyboard that bit larger. See what I did there? See, I'm pretending that it's MPE, but it is not. Which is another feature perhaps they could look at implementing, because in Bitwig on the keyboard you can do some forward and back expression, some timbre control, as well as pitch control down and up, as in pitch bend that you get on those Rolly keyboards and bits and pieces. They also have some added instructions for pen, where you can apply pressure by pushing on the pen to change another parameter. Those things are not available in Yeco at this time, which is a shame, but it's an area which I think they could move into, hopefully, relatively easily. Now over here there's a couple of extra buttons. This one is the devices button. Now that will pull in any of those devices that you've got set up in the devices view in Ableton. So if I go over to the SEM over here, you can see that it's now pulled in those device values, which is awesome. Let's go back to my piano. Those are not present because I haven't set any up. The next button here, now these are MIDI controls. They have their own CC numbers, but they're not necessarily mapped to anything, but you might find that they are. For instance, this one is sustain. These buttons here are on-off toggle buttons. Which are definitely turning something on in Ableton. These ones here seem to be push to hold, so you could say like sustain, or you're holding something on and then removing it. So it's push to make type buttons. So for MIDI mapping, you can go back into Ableton Live, hit the MIDI control button, select the thing you want to control, delay time for instance, which has now appeared as a device down here so that we can see it. Go back to Yeco, move what you want to control it, and press it over here. Turn off the MIDI. And that is now controlling delay time. Now, of course, as those controls reveal themselves within the devices view, I could hit the devices view here and actually have a better deal of control over what's going on. But sometimes MIDI is just simpler. Sometimes you can't create something in the devices view. Sometimes you just want to get some MIDI out there to control some different bits. Particularly if you're using some software other than Ableton, which is completely possible with Yeco. You just don't use the OSC side. Last thing you have in here is the same chord potential that you had as the other one, like that. Turn that on. Now Yeco also offer a whole page of MIDI controls, which I've got here on this one on the bottom. You can map these to control whatever you like. I mean, in some ways, I'm not entirely sure why they're there because of the OSC, the power of OSC, but it's like, we can do this, thought Yeco, so let's just give them a whole bunch of MIDI controls. You can map this, obviously, to whatever you like. You could use it to control hardware if you wanted. It's just MIDI, and they weren't sure exactly what to give you, so they gave you everything. You've got crossfader type sliders, on-off type things. You've got sort of test tubes at the bottom here that fill up with blue goo. You've got ones here with buttons that go on. You've got rotaries, you know, all sorts of stuff. They thought, let's throw it all in there, let's give them everything, which is awesome. And they didn't stop there. They've also given you XY controllers as well. Now I found these to be particularly useful because there's a couple of plugins that I like to use. One of them is Movement from Output. It's an awesome delay plugin. It gives you lots of amazing sounds and stuff going on, and it has an XY pad controller on its GUI. I don't have it installed on here, so I can't show you. But the major problem with it is that it makes a bad glitch every time you load it up. I mean, most plugins do it. It's not a big deal, but when you bring up the GUI, that tends to steal CPU cycles, and you get a bit of a glitch as that comes up, which is no good at all in a touch performance environment. I mean, if you're using hardware controllers, then you're not really wanting the GUI to come up necessarily. You are just playing with the knobs you've got there. And that is what Yeco offers. So rather than trying to bring up the GUI and control it with my fingers, which is what I want to do because I'm using touch and I'm using a surface, so I want to get my finger in there, and movement responds really well to that. However, to load the GUI causes a glitch, so it's just no good at all. So what I did is I mapped an XY controller here to the GUI in Ableton Live, and then I can completely control the XY pad of movement without having to load the GUI. That's awesome. I mean, the level of sophistication, the level of control that Yeco is offering you is just quite extraordinary. I mean, I guess it's a similar experience to what you get with touchOS or Lima on the iPad, but the fact that you have it built and integrated into the same machine as Ableton Live is just brilliant. I mean, I'm not having to take two devices around, not having to mess around with setup. It's all right there, right on the same machine. And as it becomes so easy with the devices view and things like that, and the way everything just really works nicely, is that it invites you in to be creative, to touch things and do MIDI control that perhaps you wouldn't have considered before, because you can set it all up and it's all there and you can start fiddling, which is what we want. We want to be pulled in. We want to be encouraged to be creative, and that's exactly what's going on here. Which brings us onto the Hex controller, this thing here. What the heck is it? I have no idea. It's just another way of playing stuff. There's also a bigger one, so you can really get stuck in. I mean, there's a reason for it, and you can read about it and how it's laid out and how it makes things easier. Bitwig has a similar adjusted keyboard thing, which is supposed to be cool and interesting. So, that's Yeco then. Or is it? No, please don't tell me there's any more. Yes, there is. Not only is it a clip launching and mixing multi-toucher, not only does it give you the ability to play and manipulate parameters and all the information in the device's view, it also lets you record. It allows you to create within Yeco itself. So you don't even have to go into Ableton Live to do anything. Well, I mean, you kind of do, because it's not all there. I don't yet have a browser on the side, so I can't load an instrument. So what we're going to do is, just to show you the recording, I'm going to load up a new project in Ableton Live and just add some stuff. So a nice clear project, Yeco reflects it. I have these buttons up here which do all of the adding and removing tracks and clips and scenes and stuff. So let's hit plus. It looks horrible. You tap in here and it adds a scene. It's the size of whatever bar is set here. Currently it's set to 2 bars, so I can add a couple of MIDI ones. If I wanted to add a new track, I tap in the top and it asks me whether it's MIDI or audio, and I can add that in without any problem. I also have a duplicate button, so if I tap in there, it will duplicate the clip to the next one. Will it duplicate that? Yes, it will. Very simple, and I can remove them as well. I've also got undo and redo. So it's a relatively simple process just to add new clips. Then how the heck do you record into them? Well, I imagine it's the same as it is on anything else, but first of all, we need to load some kind of sound. So for that, we have to go back to Ableton Live, which is one of the few times you have to do that when using Yeco, and use the browser here. So I'll get my 909 kit. I'm going to plop that on there. Like so. There's the fella. So back over here, if I bring up the drum pads, cool, I should, if I can remember how, record into it. So let's put the metronome on. Let's select ooh, see, I've got a metronome on, that's clicking. So I'm then going to put record in place on. As simple as that. I'm not in Ableton Live, I'm in Yeco, and yes, I'm recording into Ableton Live. That's pretty damn cool, I think you'll find. Yes, I think that's pretty damn cool. So let's stop that. Let's again go back into Live and slap a sound onto the second one. Let's put up MiniMoog like that. Cool. That's a horrible sound. God, why do they do that? I don't understand why they do that. Just want a bass noise. Is that too hard to ask from a MiniMoog? Just a bass noise. And let's stick the piano up over there. Cool. Back into Yeco. I've got me. Let's go over to here. Ooh. Oh yeah, I had the record quantization on a course because my playing is rubbish. So they are recording in Yeco. That's not hard, is it? No, not at all. It's very easy to build these things up, and then I can, as I say, I can duplicate them, and you can't move them about. There's no sort of dragging and drop moving about, as I said before, is in most cases a good thing. But once you start creating, I do like dragging stuff about, so, you know, but that's just me. So there's scope definitely there for development in what you can do. Rather than using these buttons to duplicate and to add new ones, it might be interesting to be able to have push a button that allows me to drag these things around rather than launch them. See, that would be a possibility. I mean, obviously Yeco is just a controller, so it has its limitations. I mean, it's not going to let me edit individual notes. It's not going to let me slice up samples. There's no access to the browser, so I can't currently drop in samples or instruments or effects. And more's a pity, because the working environment in here is actually really rather good, and in many ways I'd like to spend more time in here than I do in Ableton Live. However, a little bird has told me that they are working on adding browser support, so you will be able to drop things on to tracks. Interesting. But it's really in live performance, which is where this, for me, has become a bit of a revelation. I mean, I have spoken about my trouble with Bitwig and accidentally selecting clips rather than launching them, and that kind of ruining my confidence in the idea. I mean, I love Bitwig as a creative platform, and I can do a lot of work in there, and it's a great place to work. I love the MIDI editing, I love the performance controls, and the way that it works really well with the pen and with touch. All of that is really great, and it's my go-to if ever I have an idea I want to sketch down. I do it in Bitwig, so that's awesome. But in live performance, I've lost confidence in it, and this, on the other hand, has completely restored my confidence in using Ableton Live. The way that it works, the accessibility, the fact that it's there, I can see everything that I need. I can easily navigate, move around, because in Bitwig, again, you're trying to use 2 fingers to move around, which just sometimes fills me with dread that I'm going to move something or trigger something by accident. But here, it's brilliant. It's superb. The use of the virtual MIDI keyboard and other things are all good. I like that it's there. I like the chord element, because it gives it a reason to be there, because I do have a keyboard, and actually I would prefer to play this than I would to play a virtual keyboard. I mean, of course, that's only natural, I think. So if they're including those sorts of controls, the fact that it has some additional functionality, like the chord thing, gives it a reason for being. And also the fact that you can team it up with the devices control here, that starts to make it more interesting, and will drag you towards using it. Besides, the other thing is that when you're into a project and you're recording and doing stuff here, then it's actually nice to be able to stay there and tap away without having to go to another device. You know, I like that. I like that synergy. That really works for me. But also, I love the way that the Microsoft Surface Book has essentially reduced my kit list. I could take just the Surface Book plus my audio interface, very important audio interface to get low latency and high quality playback. I can use just those things. I don't need to take an iPad for additional control. I don't even need to take a MIDI keyboard or a launch pad. It's all within Yeco, and that makes it very interesting indeed. You know, and you could, with a Surface Book, create an entire controllable, interactable, movable and evolutionary creative performance with just the single device. I mean, ultimately, I'm a fan of using everything. I want to use this. I don't mind using a mouse and keyboard. I want to use, you know, synths and hardware and controllers all at once. And what Yeco gives me is something more. It doesn't have to replace everything, although, as I said, it can do that. What it does is it transforms Ableton Live into a touchable, usable, manipulable piece of software from touch. And that gives me more creative opportunities. Now, there's stuff it doesn't do that I'd like to see it do. The browser, as I say, forthcoming with a bit of luck, that's going to be interesting. I would like MPE support. I would like to be able to tap on here and push and have that change the timbre of a sound, but that's probably going to require Ableton Live to be MPE compatible. Well, I don't know, but there are some plug-in instruments you can run that would be, so I would like to see that. I would like to see a step sequencer. I'd like to see this view with a timeline going across so that I can set notes as it goes along. That would be awesome. I would like to be able to customize things a little bit more, so I might like to have the drum pads up, but I'd also like to have the devices view perhaps over here. I might like a hex thing up, and I might like the, I don't know, the XY controllers at the same time. Why can I not have all of these things on the screen? Why can I not have one XY controller, a couple of faders here, and the devices bit coming down the side? I want it all. I want it customizable. I want to bend it to my will. But overall, Yeco is by far the most well thought out multi-touch controller on Windows. I imagine on Apple as well. I don't know. I don't look at Apple's, but I guess much of the magic of Yeco is in the OSC connection with Ableton Live. That is what enables it to suck all that information into Yeco to show you the information that you need in order to use it correctly. If it was just a MIDI controller, then perhaps it wouldn't be quite so magical. I mean, I know Yeco are working on a standalone MIDI controller version, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. But I fear that it will lose a lot in the loss of OSC. And this again brings up that argument about MIDI 2.0 and what are people doing about it, and why has that not evolved? Why other bits of software have not supported OSC? Why Cubase doesn't? Why Pro Tools doesn't? Why Studio One doesn't? I mean, maybe they're not seeing themselves as performance software, and so they don't see those things as important. They have, I mean, for heaven's sake, you've got Mackie Control. I mean, Mackie Control from 150 million years ago, and we're still using that to move a couple of faders and to get access to EQ on a couple of knobs. I mean, wow. Is that still exciting? Really? So as you can see, I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to be using it more and more. It's a perfect match for the Surface Book. Absolutely perfect. It's a prime example of how good the Surface Book is as a platform. Surface Pro as well. The Surface range, I mean, the big one is going to be flipping amazing. Can you imagine running that? Oh, big fingers. Oh. Yeah. Even if you are controlling everything with hardware, the clip view, the display that it's giving you, is far better than Ableton Live. It's bigger, it's clearer, you can see what's going on. And that's brilliant. Simply brilliant. So is there anything I don't really like? Well, the color scheme, okay? I'm not in love with the color scheme. This sort of muted green and gray thing, I mean, it's all right. I'm just not in love with it. I mean, the meters in particular. I mean, it's kind of, you know, the whole green lights on, green buttons lighting up green to tell you they've done something kind of affair. So I just wonder whether they could do something more interesting with that. The other slight thing is that with the turny circle things on Ableton Live, you do have a number in it which tells you how many bars it is. So your brain doesn't have to decide how big it is through the speed of the circle. It knows just by seeing the 32 or the 16 or the 8. There is no number corresponding to that within the clip view here. You just get the sweep. And again, your brain can work out that that's sweeping faster than that one, and so therefore that one is twice the size of that one. A number telling you that information would just be helpful at a glance. So when you glance at something, you can see that information. You don't have to think about it. See what I mean? So yeah, MPE control, more customization, maybe do something with the flipping color, because it's greening me out, man. And numbers of bars, those are things I can think of that would make an immediate impression on improving Yeco to be even more super than it already is. It's a great job, Yeco, and I'm looking forward to more. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.